The alien delegation landed quietly in the middle of the Nevada desert. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Around them, the dry, dusty landscape stretched endlessly, broken only by the occasional cactus or tumbleweed rolling in the breeze. The spacecraft they had arrived in gleamed faintly under the fading light, its smooth surface reflecting the colors of the sunset. Though their arrival had been planned, there was an air of mystery hanging over the scene. No crowds cheered, no cameras flashed. Instead, a small group of humans stood waiting a short distance away. Leading the human team was Agent Ryan Carter, a tall man with sharp features and calm eyes. Beside him stood Dr. Emily Dawson, a scientist known for her work in interstellar diplomacy. She adjusted her glasses nervously as she watched the aliens step out of their ship. There were 4 of them, all dressed in sleek, metallic suits that shimmered softly. Their leader, Vren, stepped forward first. His movements were deliberate, almost regal, and his voice carried a tone of quiet confidence when he spoke. "Welcome to Earth," Ryan said, breaking the silence. He offered a polite smile, though his expression remained guarded. "We've prepared materials to help you understand our culture." With that, he handed each alien a tablet preloaded with information about human history, traditions, and values. The gesture seemed friendly enough, but something about it felt off, too rehearsed, too controlled. Vren tilted his head slightly, studying Ryan with piercing eyes. "Thank you," he replied, his voice smooth and measured. "We look forward to learning from you." Behind him, his companions exchanged glances. Kale, the tallest of the group, looked skeptical, while Lara, who appeared younger, seemed curious. Tin, the 4th member, simply observed everything in silence, his sharp gaze taking in every detail. As the aliens examined the tablets, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was being hidden from them. Humans weren't acting like the primitive species Zorathians had expected. Instead, they behaved with calculated calmness, almost as if they were testing the aliens rather than welcoming them. This thought unsettled Vren, though he didn't let it show. He had read reports about humans. They were unpredictable, emotional, and often acted without logic. But this felt different. Dr. Dawson stepped forward then, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "If you'll follow me, we'll begin orientation shortly," she said, gesturing toward a nearby building. The structure was unremarkable, a simple 1-story facility made of concrete, but the aliens noticed several security cameras mounted on its walls. They exchanged another glance, silently communicating their suspicions. Inside, the room was bright and sterile, filled with chairs arranged in a semicircle. A large screen displayed images of Earth's landscapes. Mountains, oceans, cities, all meant to give the impression of diversity and beauty. As the aliens took their seats, Alex, Mia, Noah, and Sophie entered the room. These 4 teenagers had been chosen to assist in the program, serving as representatives of humanity's youth. Alex grinned broadly as he introduced himself, his enthusiasm unmistakable. "Hey, I'm Alex. Hope we can learn some cool stuff together." Mia nodded politely, her dark hair tied back in a neat ponytail. "And I'm Mia," she added, her voice soft but steady. Noah waved awkwardly, mumbling his name, while Sophie gave a shy smile. The aliens stared at them, puzzled. Why involve children? Weren't these humans aware of how important this exchange was? Vren cleared his throat, addressing the group. "We appreciate your efforts, but surely adults would be more suitable for such tasks." Ryan chuckled lightly, shaking his head. "You'd be surprised what young minds can achieve. Besides, part of understanding humanity is seeing how we grow and adapt. These kids might teach you more than you think." Vren frowned, unsure whether to take the comment seriously. Still, he nodded, deciding to play along for now. Little did he know, the real lessons were only beginning. The next morning, the aliens found themselves seated in a classroom inside the facility. The room was plain, with white walls and rows of desks facing a large screen at the front. Dr. Emily Dawson stood by the screen, ready to lead the first lesson. She smiled warmly as she greeted everyone. Today, we'll focus on some key aspects of human behavior: teamwork, creativity, and adaptability, she explained. Her tone was calm, but there was a hint of excitement in her voice. Vren raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. He glanced at his companions, who shared his skepticism. To them, these concepts seemed basic, almost childish. After all, Zorathians prided themselves on their advanced knowledge and logical thinking. What could humans possibly teach them? Still, they listened quietly as Dr. Dawson introduced the day's activities. To make things more engaging, the humans paired each alien with one of the teenagers. Alex was teamed up with Kale, Mia with Lyra, Noah with Tin, and Sophie with Vren. At first, the aliens hesitated, unsure how to interact with their young partners. But the humans didn't give them much time to think. Within minutes, the groups were handed puzzles and challenges designed to test their ability to work together. Alex wasted no time jumping into action. He spread out pieces of a complex mechanical puzzle on the table, his eyes scanning them quickly. "Okay, so here's the plan," he said, pointing to different parts. "If we connect this piece to that one, it should unlock the mechanism." Kel watched him, frowning slightly. The approach seemed chaotic, lacking the precision Zorathians valued. Yet before he could argue, Alex had already started assembling the puzzle. Within moments, the device clicked into place, working perfectly. "How did you do that?" Kale asked, genuinely surprised. Alex shrugged, grinning. "Just fly outside the box, I guess. Sometimes you don't need to overthink stuff." At another table, Mia faced a completely different challenge. She and Lyra were tasked with building a small bridge using limited materials. As they worked, Maya noticed Lyra struggling to come up with ideas. "It's okay if it's not perfect," Maya said gently. "Sometimes, just trying something new can lead to great results." Encouraged by her words, Lyra began experimenting, mixing unconventional designs until the bridge finally held steady. For the first time, Lyra felt a spark of pride. Not because she succeeded, but because she learned to embrace imperfection. Meanwhile, Noah and Ten tackled a problem-solving exercise involving a simulated emergency. A mock fire alarm went off, and they had to figure out how to evacuate safely while carrying supplies. Noah took charge, dividing tasks between them. "You grab the water bottles. I'll handle the flashlight," he instructed. Though hesitant at first, Tyne followed his lead, realizing that clear communication made things easier. By the end of the drill, even Tin admitted that teamwork had its merits. Sophie and Vren, however, hit a roadblock early on. Their task involved decoding a series of cryptic messages. Vren immediately tried solving it through logic, analyzing patterns and formulas. But no matter how hard he focused, the solution eluded him. Frustrated, he snapped at Sophie when she suggested a simpler method. "This isn't about brute force," she said patiently. "Sometimes, you have to trust your instincts." Reluctantly, Vren gave her idea a chance, and to his astonishment, it worked. By the end of the day, the aliens were exhausted but intrigued. They hadn't expected the exercises to reveal so much about human nature, or about themselves. Alex's creativity, Mia's encouragement, Noah's leadership, and Sophie's intuition left a lasting impression. Even Vren, who had remained skeptical throughout, couldn't deny that humans had qualities worth exploring further. As they returned to their quarters, Kale turned to Vren. "Maybe they're not as primitive as we thought," he admitted. Vren didn't respond right away. Instead, he stared out the window, watching the stars twinkle in the night sky. For the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Perhaps there was more to humanity than met the eye. The third day of the program started like any other, with the aliens and humans gathering in the main hall for another round of activities. But this time, there was an undercurrent of tension in the air. The aliens had begun to notice small things that didn't add up. The way Agent Ryan Carter exchanged quick glances with Dr. Emily Dawson, the constant presence of security cameras, and the fact that certain areas of the facility were off-limits. Vren couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, studied, maybe even manipulated. That suspicion turned into certainty when disaster struck. Midway through a presentation on human history, the lights flickered and then went out completely. The room plunged into darkness, leaving everyone disoriented. A low murmur of confusion spread among the humans, but the aliens froze, their reliance on technology suddenly becoming a weakness. Without power, their suits' internal systems dimmed, cutting off access to their communication devices and navigation tools. "What's happening?" Lyra asked, her voice trembling. No one answered immediately. In the chaos, Tang tried to activate his suit's backup systems, but nothing worked. For beings used to having answers at their fingertips, the sudden loss of control was terrifying. Ryan's voice cut through the noise, calm but firm. "Everyone stay calm. This is likely just a temporary outage." He turned on a flashlight, its beam cutting through the dark. "Let's split into teams to assess the situation and find solutions." Alex stepped forward, already thinking ahead. "We should divide tasks," he suggested. "Some of us can check the generator, others can gather supplies in case we're stuck here longer than expected." His confidence inspired action, and soon the group began organizing themselves. Surprisingly, it was Tin who took charge of the aliens, assigning roles based on each member's strengths. Kale focused on structural safety, Lyra helped inventory supplies, and Vren coordinated with Ryan to figure out what caused the blackout. As they worked together, the aliens realized something unexpected. Humans thrived in uncertainty. While they relied on logic and precision, the humans adapted quickly, using whatever resources were available. Noah, for example, fashioned a makeshift light by attaching a reflective surface to Ryan's flashlight, amplifying its glow. Sophie calmed nervous participants by cracking jokes, keeping morale high. Even Mia, who wasn't physically strong, proved invaluable by remembering where emergency blankets were stored. For hours, the two groups collaborated, piecing together clues about the outage. Eventually, they discovered that a circuit breaker had tripped due to an overload. It seemed like a simple issue, yet the timing felt suspicious. Why now? And why had no alarms gone off beforehand? These questions lingered in Vren's mind as he helped reset the system alongside Alex. When the lights finally came back on, revealing tired but relieved faces, Ryan clapped his hands together. "Great job, everyone. You handled that remarkably well." There was pride in his voice, but also something else, a hint of satisfaction, as though the entire scenario had been planned. Vren narrowed his eyes, suspicion flaring again. He pulled Ryan aside after the others dispersed. "Was this part of your test?" he demanded, his tone sharp. Ryan hesitated before nodding slowly. "Yes," he admitted. "We needed to see how you'd respond under pressure. Humanity has faced countless crises. We wanted to know if you could adapt too." To Vren's surprise, he didn't feel anger, just a grudging respect. Humans weren't perfect, but they were resilient. And perhaps, just perhaps, there was wisdom in their imperfection. As he rejoined his team, he silently vowed to keep watching, learning, and questioning. The exchange program was far from over, and neither side had revealed all their cards yet. Over the next few days, the atmosphere between the humans and aliens began to shift. The staged power outage had forced both sides to work closely together, breaking down some of the walls of suspicion and pride that had stood between them. For the first time, real conversations started to happen, not just about tasks or lessons, but about experiences, fears, and hopes. One evening, after a long day of activities, Maya sat with Lyra in a quiet corner of the facility. They were supposed to be reviewing notes from the day's session, but instead, Maya found herself sharing a personal story. "A few years ago," she began softly, "my family lived through a big storm. Our house flooded, and we lost almost everything. But neighbors came to help us rebuild. That's when I learned how strong people can be when they stick together. Lyra listened intently, her large eyes reflecting curiosity. She had always believed strength came from individual ability, not collective effort. On Zorethia, success was measured by how much one could achieve alone. Yet, hearing Maya's words made her rethink that belief. It sounds nice, Lyra said hesitantly, to have others you can count on, even when things go wrong. Mia smiled. It is. You don't have to face everything by yourself. Sometimes, leaning on someone else makes you stronger, not weaker. At another table nearby, Noah challenged Kel to a game of chess. At first, Kel dominated, his moves precise and calculated. But halfway through the match, Noah suggested switching to poker instead. This one's more about reading people than planning moves, he explained as he shuffled a deck of cards. Kel raised an eyebrow, but agreed to give it a try. The game turned out to be a disaster for Kel. He lost hand after hand, unable to hide his frustration. Yet, despite his losses, he couldn't stop laughing at how unpredictable the game was. How do you win without knowing what will happen next? He asked, shaking his head in disbelief. Noah grinned. That's the fun part. Life doesn't always follow rules, so sometimes you just gotta roll with it. Even Vren, who usually kept his distance, found himself drawn into moments of connection. During a break, Sophie showed him how to play a simple melody on a guitar she'd brought with her. At first, Vren struggled, his fingers clumsy on the strings, but Sophie encouraged him patiently, showing him where to place his hands. When he finally managed to strum a clear note, his face lit up with genuine surprise. Music isn't logical, he admitted, but it feels good. These small interactions added up, creating bonds that neither side had anticipated. Alex taught 10 how to throw a frisbee outside during a break, their laughter echoing across the empty field. Dr. Dawson noticed the change and shared a quiet smile with Ryan. They're starting to see each other differently, she remarked. Not as enemies or experiments, but as individuals. Still, doubts lingered beneath the surface. While the aliens admired human creativity and teamwork, they remained cautious. Humans, too, weren't fully convinced the aliens had pure intentions. Yet these moments of vulnerability hinted at something deeper, a shared desire to understand and connect. By the end of the week, Lyra confided in Mia about the pressure she felt back home to be perfect. On Zorethia, failure is seen as weakness, she admitted. But here, maybe failing isn't so bad if you learn from it. Mia nodded, understanding completely. Exactly. It's all part of growing. As the sun set over the desert, casting long shadows across the facility, both humans and aliens gathered around a campfire. Someone handed Vren a marshmallow skewer, and though he didn't know what to do with it at first, he joined in the laughter when his marshmallow caught fire. For a brief moment, the differences between them faded, replaced by a sense of unity. Neither side knew what the future held, but for now, they chose to focus on the connections they'd built, and the possibility that understanding might lead to trust. It was late in the program, and tensions began to rise again. The aliens had grown more comfortable with the humans, but Vren still couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. His suspicions deepened one night when he decided to explore parts of the facility that were supposedly off-limits. The humans had been careful to keep those areas secured, but Vren's curiosity outweighed his caution. Using a small device hidden in his suit, he disabled a locked door and slipped inside. The room was dimly lit, filled with monitors displaying streams of data and classified documents. As Vren scanned the files, his eyes widened in shock. He discovered plans detailing Earth's contingency strategies against potential Zorethian threats. There were maps marking weak points on their home planet, analyses of Zorethian technology, and even notes about how to counteract their advanced weaponry. Vren's heart raced as he absorbed the information. The humans weren't just studying them, they were preparing for war. Anger bubbled up inside him, but he forced himself to stay calm. He copied the files onto his device and left the room as quietly as he'd entered. The next morning, Vren confronted Ryan and Dr. Dawson in the main hall. His voice was cold and sharp as he held up the device. "You lied to us," he accused. "This entire program was a setup. You don't want peace. You're planning to fight us." Ryan's face hardened, but he didn't deny it. Instead, he stepped forward, meeting Vren's gaze without flinching. "Yes, we prepared for the worst," he admitted. "But isn't that what your people did too? Don't pretend you came here without an agenda. We intercepted signals from Zorathia discussing plans to exploit Earth's resources if you found us useful enough." The room fell silent. The other aliens exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to respond. Lyra looked down at her feet, guilt flickering across her face. It was true. Zorathian leaders had sent them, not just to study humanity, but to assess whether Earth could be of value to their empire. They had spies among their ranks, disguised as students, gathering intelligence just like the humans. For a moment, it seemed like the fragile trust they'd built would shatter completely. But then Vren took a deep breath, his expression softening slightly. "So we're no better than each other," he said quietly. "Both sides testing, both sides hiding." Dr. Dawson nodded slowly. "That's exactly why we need to talk openly now. If we let fear control us, this will end badly for everyone." Vren hesitated, weighing his options. Finally, he spoke. "Fine. Let's lay everything on the table. Our leaders sent us to evaluate Earth's worth to Zorathia. Some of my team are operatives, not students, but I can tell you this. We've seen things here that make me question whether conquest is the answer." Ryan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Like what?" "The way your people work together," Vren replied. "How you adapt, even when you're scared or unprepared. You're flawed, yes, but there's strength in that. Maybe cooperation could benefit both our worlds instead of conflict." Dr. Dawson smiled faintly. "That's a start. And maybe we can offer something in return, knowledge, technology, or even friendship, if we decide to move forward honestly." Over the next few hours, the two groups shared their secrets. The humans revealed more about their defensive plans, while the aliens explained the pressures from their own government. It wasn't easy. Old fears didn't disappear overnight. But by speaking plainly, they began to see each other not as enemies, but as partners facing similar challenges. By the end of the conversation, Vren felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time, he allowed himself to hope, not for domination or victory, but for understanding. The road ahead would be difficult, but perhaps honesty could pave the way to something greater than either side had imagined. With only a few days left in the program, the aliens and humans worked hard to build on the fragile trust they had started to form. Both sides knew that time was running out, and they wanted to make the most of it. The mood had shifted from suspicion to cautious optimism, though neither group forgot the secrets that had been revealed. Still, they focused on finding common ground, determined to leave the program with something positive. Ryan proposed a new idea, sharing knowledge openly. "If we're serious about working together," he said during one of their meetings, "then let's share what we have. You show us your advancements, and we'll do the same." Vren agreed, seeing this as a chance to prove that cooperation could work. The aliens introduced Earth to Zorathian innovations in renewable energy, technology that could harness sunlight more efficiently than anything humans had developed. Dr. Dawson was amazed, her eyes lighting up as she studied the designs. "This could change everything for us," she said, her voice full of excitement. "Cleaner energy, less pollution. It's incredible." In return, the humans shared breakthroughs in medical research, including treatments for diseases that had once seemed incurable. Lyra listened closely, fascinated by how humans approached healthcare with such care and dedication. "We focus so much on perfection," she admitted later to Mia. "But maybe there's beauty in helping others, even if you can't fix everything." The personal connections continued to grow stronger too. Alex taught Kel how to play poker properly this time, laughing as Kel struggled to bluff convincingly. "You've got to relax," Alex teased. "It's not about winning. It's about having fun." Kel shook his head but couldn't stop smiling, realizing that sometimes losing wasn't so bad after all. Noah and Tyne spent hours discussing space travel. Tyne explained how Zorethians navigated the stars using advanced mapping systems, while Noah shared stories of Earth's early astronauts who had ventured into the unknown with little more than courage and hope. "They didn't know if they'd make it back," Noah said, his voice filled with admiration. "But they went anyway because they believed in exploring the universe." Even Sophie managed to draw Vren out of his usual seriousness. One evening, she handed him the guitar again and encouraged him to try playing a song. At first, he hesitated, muttering about how music made no logical sense. But Sophie persisted, guiding his fingers until he played a simple tune. When he finished, the others clapped, and for the first time, Vren felt a genuine sense of accomplishment, not from solving a problem or proving his superiority, but from creating something beautiful. As the final day approached, both groups prepared heartfelt gestures. Lyra gave Mia a small crystal pendant from Zorethia, its surface shimmering with colors that changed depending on the light. "To remember me by," Lyra said shyly. Mia hugged her tightly, promising to stay in touch through the communication frequencies they had exchanged. Kale surprised Noah by gifting him a Zorethian artifact, a tiny sphere that glowed softly when touched. "For teaching me about unpredictability," Kale said with a grin. Noah laughed, holding the sphere carefully. "Guess I'll have to teach you more games next time." Ryan and Dr. Dawson also made an effort to solidify the bond. They presented the aliens with a folder containing detailed plans for future collaborations, along with a handwritten note expressing gratitude for the lessons learned. "We hope this is just the beginning," Dr. Dawson said sincerely. On the last night, everyone gathered around the campfire one final time. The flames crackled softly as they shared stories, laughter, and quiet reflections. Though doubts still lingered about whether their two worlds could truly coexist peacefully, the seeds of friendship had been planted. For now, that was enough. As Vren looked around at the faces illuminated by firelight, he felt a spark of hope. Humans were unpredictable, flawed, and often confusing, but they were also resilient, kind, and capable of great things. Perhaps, he thought, the real lesson of this exchange wasn't about strategies or technologies. It was about learning to see beyond differences and embracing the possibility of connection. The final day arrived, and the aliens prepared to leave Earth. The morning was quiet, with a sense of both accomplishment and uncertainty hanging in the air. The humans gathered outside the facility to see them off, standing in a loose circle as the sleek spacecraft gleamed under the bright desert sun. Vren stood at the front of his group, his expression unreadable but his posture relaxed. For once, he didn't seem guarded or distant. Before boarding, Vren stepped forward to address the humans. He paused for a moment, collecting his thoughts, then spoke clearly. "We came here expecting to study you, to judge your worth. But what we found was unexpected. You are not perfect. Neither are we. Yet there is strength in your flaws, courage in your adaptability, and wisdom in your willingness to trust despite fear." His words hung in the silence, and Ryan nodded slowly, acknowledging the sentiment. "And we learned from you too," Ryan replied. "Your knowledge, your discipline, and your perspective have given us much to think about. Perhaps our future lies not in competition, but in partnership." Vren gave a small nod, then turned to look at the teenagers who had become such an important part of the program. Alex grinned and waved enthusiastically, while Mia smiled warmly, her hand resting on the crystal pendant Lyra had given her. Noah held up the glowing sphere Kale had gifted him, letting it catch the sunlight, and Sophie strummed a soft chord on her guitar, earning a chuckle from Tyne. As the aliens boarded their ship, Lyra hesitated at the entrance, glancing back one last time. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying just enough for Mia to hear. Then she disappeared inside, the door sealing shut behind her. The spacecraft hummed to life, its engines roaring softly as it lifted off the ground. Everyone watched in silence as it ascended higher and higher, eventually becoming a speck against the vast blue sky. When it was gone, the humans remained standing there for a while, lost in thought. Ryan turned to Dr. Dawson, breaking the quiet. "Do you think they'll come back?" he asked, his tone measured but hopeful. Dr. Dawson adjusted her glasses, a faint smile playing on her lips. "They will," she said confidently. "Not because they have to, but because they want to." This wasn't just an exchange of knowledge. It was the start of something bigger. The teenagers lingered a little longer, reluctant to leave. Alex kicked at the dirt, grinning to himself. "Man, I can't believe I played poker with an alien," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. Noah laughed, holding up the glowing sphere. "And I got a souvenir." Mia looked down at her pendant, running her fingers over its smooth surface. "I hope they're okay out there," she murmured. Sophie nodded, still clutching her guitar. "Me too. They might act tough, but I think they're just as scared as we are sometimes." Later that evening, as the team packed up the facility, Ryan found himself reflecting on the experience. They had started this program with caution, even distrust, but it had ended with understanding, and maybe even friendship. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Both sides had secrets, fears, and agendas that couldn't be erased overnight. But for the first time, there was hope. Back in space, Vren sat in the cockpit of the ship, staring out at the stars. His mind replayed the moments they had shared with the humans, the laughter, the challenges, the lessons. He tapped a few commands into the console, sending a final message to Earth before switching off the screen. "We underestimated you, humans." The message read, "You are not what we expected, but perhaps that is a good thing. Our journey does not end here. Until next time." As the ship sailed through the endless void, Vren leaned back in his seat, allowing himself to feel a flicker of optimism. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but maybe that unpredictability was exactly what the universe needed. And perhaps, just perhaps, the bond they had formed would pave the way for a brighter future for both their worlds.